Well, hello everybody. Glad to see you all today. This is the Carver Talks podcast, and today we have Peter A. Bell back again today. Now, if you remember, he promised to come back on after the election, so here he is. But in the meantime, we've had some really fascinating things that are going on. Peter will tell you all about, so we will get straight into it. Welcome back, Peter. So glad to have you on.
Hi, Eddie. It's good to be here.
Brilliant, cool. So let's get straight into it. The election, was it as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Slightly worse, perhaps. I mean, how many seats did the SNP lose? I lost. I wasn't really that interested because it didn't really matter. The result of the election wasn't going to make any difference one way or the other. But it was a serious electoral slap for the SNP, no doubt about that. Although to listen to them, you wouldn't think so. They don't seem to have taken anything on board from it at all. The clincher for me was when I heard that they didn't even have it on the agenda for their conference at the end of August, beginning of September. Now they're saying, the agenda was already set. But as soon as that election was called, they knew it was going to happen. So they've known all this time that it was going to happen. And so they had plenty of time to make arrangements to adjust the agenda. And then you discover they've done absolutely nothing. Apparently, they were quite happy for conference to go ahead without even any mention of the referendum of the election. I'm doing what you were doing now. So that was a clincher for me. I said, this is just absolutely hopeless. And the back to their old ways, there's something going on. Let's not talk about it. Let's just ignore it, and maybe it will go away. And of course, it never does.
This is something they've been doing, as you know, for quite a while, Peter. And like you say, I mean, all the time this has gone on, all you can hope for is that more and more people, and obviously they have looking at 9 out of 59 seats from 56, as you know, back a few years ago. It's like, when are people going to realise? So the party really it's given up the pretense of even purporting to support independence. It's just not even a part of their manifesto anymore. Is it that bad?
It is that bad. It is that bad. It is so obvious now that they are only using the word independence as an electioneering tool. Now, this isn't just the SNP, but, folk will have to forgive us if we concentrate mainly on the SNP, because they're the party of government. They're supposedly the party of independence. Of course, we're going to focus on them. They're supposed to be the big one. And they're just not being that, but it is the other parties as well. They're all just using independence as a vote catching device, and especially in a Westminster election, there was the opportunity was there to do something different, but we got the result that I think most of us were expecting, except the deluded SNP loyalists who really are these are really strange people. I'm not quite sure how they can so forcefully deny reality. They're just very strange.
It is very difficult, Peter. And what kind of, obviously, there's less and less of these, what do you call them, hardcore individuals that just seem so stubborn. So obviously we're needing to move on. So Alba obviously came up, grew out of this and stuff. And I think you quite rightly point out in your blogs that there's nothing concrete there either. Nothing nowhere near as concrete. So can you help the viewers distinguish, say, between the SNP, which we both agree, and more people obviously have agreed have completely failed. So where's Alba, say, going wrong with this, or where is it not committing where it should?
both Alba and SNP, and apologies to the other. I know there are other nominally pro-independence parties, but we can't mention them all the time. That would get a bit tedious. But the thing is that they're all deferring to Westminster. They'll claim that they're not, but they are. If you look at the small print, if you read it carefully, what you discover is that they're all deferring to Westminster. So the SNP last October passed a motion, a leadership motion at conference, which the members, the loyalists, the party loyalists amongst the members anyway, hailed as this great new approach to the constitutional issue, this whole new route to independence, blah blah blah. It wasn't. It was just another Section 30 request, but without actually mentioning Section 30. And Alba did exactly the same. They couched it in a form of words, demand negotiations with Westminster. Well, A, what makes you think they're going to turn up for these negotiations? And B, even if they do, what else are they going to negotiate except a Section 30 referendum? That is the only thing they can possibly negotiate. So again, it was just an attempt to conceal the fact that they're still on this Section 30 nonsense, which we now know for a fact cannot possibly lead to independence. The simple fact, I mean, I could run through a catalogue of reasons why it can't lead to independence, but the simple fact that it's a consultative, non-self-executing exercise, it is basically just a glorified opinion poll. And the British government can just ignore it. Yeah. None of the parties, none of them has what I call a plan for independence. That is a series of steps, each leading on from the other, and with independence right at the end point, independence. None of them has anything like that. And you ask them about it, and they'll either tell you, "Oh, just go and look at our website. All the information's there." I said, "No. If you've got a plan, you can set it out. If it's a real plan, you can set it out in a series of bullet points. So show me. Just you show me." And of course, they don't. They never have. Years I've been trying to get Alba to show me this plan. For years they've been insisting that their supporters have been insisting that they have a plan, and yet nobody has been able to show me it. And it's exactly the same with the SNP. They don't have a plan. Their favourite line when anybody starts talking about the plan is, "Oh, we shouldn't be talking about process. We should be talking about vision. We should all be Gordon McIntyre Kemp." Well, yeah, Gordon McIntyre Kemp is fine, but what progress have we made? He claims to be the biggest organisation, campaigning organisation, pulling together all these others. Yet, still, despite that, they've still made no progress. So there you've got what we could probably refer to as the two main pro-independent, nominally pro-independence parties, and what is supposedly the biggest campaigning organisation, all saying that they're really working hard at it, they're really going for it, and nothing is changing, nothing is moving. The polls are still stuck around that 50% or just under. Now, they haven't moved in 10 years. So
this is interesting. Okay, I'm glad you brought that. So yeah, so this gives me that terrible word of segue in here, I suppose. Can't think of a better word for it. So with the parties, say, we say the SNP and the ALBA, it seems to me that you're saying that these are all like deferring to Westminster, and we can't have even a debate outside of the UK context out of that system. So is this where the idea with your party comes in? And obviously something that, more and more people have thought of more and more over time is, like, I think you've probably said it yourself, power is never devolved,
Power's never given, it's only ever taken.
It's only ever taken. Yes, it's exactly that. That's the kind of principle we're talking about here. So your idea of the party and stuff, I'm assuming it's stemmed from this. So, where are you going with this, and how are you hoping to achieve to, break that deadlock? Because like you said, there's lots of initiatives with Salvo and this, that, and the other. And you said yourself that our parties are only working within that sort of Westminster context, which leaves us out of power, doesn't it? It leaves us just talking to ourselves. So can you explain then, is that correct? So this is what you want to do with your party, is do your bullet points, and you want to make a promise, and you want to stand up and say, this is what we're going to do, and let the British establishment challenge us, rather than we challenge them. Is that roughly correct?
That's pretty much it, yeah. It's the Manifesto for Independence, which is now maybe getting on for 5 years old. It's been around that long. It's been revised a wee bit, it's been tweaked here and there. It was Jeff Bush and I worked on it before the 2021 Scottish Parliament election. And we basically just wanted to show what a manifesto for independence looks like. And then we're saying, well, mainly to the SNP, if you haven't got this manifesto for independence, if that isn't in your manifesto, then you've no bloody right calling yourself an independence party or the party for independence. And the same goes for the other parties. Now, that manifesto actually sets out the plan, and the plan is realistic. That's because there is only one way that Scotland's independence can be restored. It will require an act of the Scottish Parliament, but that will first require that the Scottish Parliament has the legislative competence. There is only one way for the Scottish Parliament to acquire that legislative competence, and that is by asserting it, by taking it, by simply saying, we hereby declare that henceforth, and that's it. Now, if the British state wants to challenge that, fine. But for one thing, when we do this, when the Scottish Parliament asserts its legislative competence over the Constitution, it states as the main reason being this the only way that they can facilitate the exercise by the people of Scotland of our right of self-determination. There being no other way. This is the only way that it can be done. And that gets it into the area of human rights, because the right of self-determination is defined by the UN as a human right. So if the British state want to challenge this, they are challenging a human right. They only have two arguments, basically. They either say, no, you're not a nation, you're not a people, you have no right to self-determination, now shut up and get on with it, make the best of what you've got. Or they claim, oh, but there is a way. Within the UK, there is a way that the people can exercise their right of self-determination. And then they've got to say what it is. They've got to describe it. And if they come up with a Section 30 process, the ICJ and the UN are going to say, no, that is not a free and fair process. I mean, for a start, there should be no interference from what the UN refers to as the administering power. Mm-hmm. So the UK government shouldn't be involved at all. This should be something that's entirely done in Scotland.
Yeah.
And they will claim that the 2014 referendum was left entirely up to the Scottish government, but the Scottish government could only act as an agency of the British Parliament, an executive agency of the British Parliament. So it had to act within the powers that it then had. It needs this legislative competence. And the only way to get it is to take it. I'm going to say that again.
Yeah. Peter, I would just like to say, I mean, this is, you know, with all respect, this is an old conversation. This is not a slur. This is not on what you're trying to do now. But this conversation, you know, or what you're describing right now, this has always been in the background. So, what is the reason? I mean, is it like a failed political party? Is it the Yes movement in general? Is it just part of, you know, the Scottish nature? Why have we spent so many years knowing what you're talking about right now, but we still haven't come anywhere in that challenge? So are you hoping that your party will establish itself and be able to do this and grow over time, considering, you know, like I said, the amount of, you know, parties out there now, the different initiatives and stuff? It must be, at the same time, we desperately need a new party that's committed and open and honest, something we don't have. But at the same time, it's a very difficult environment out there, isn't it?
Actually, I would argue that we don't need a new party. What we actually need is one of the existing parties,
Yes,
particularly the SNP, to get their act together and admit that there is no route to independence through the framework, the legislative and constitutional framework that of the British state. That legislative and constitutional framework has been set up to protect the union, or it's evolved to protect the union. So there is no route there, but they won't admit it for various reasons. Venality, cowardice. I mean, you've got to have a bit of guts to go up against the British state, you know. But I would much prefer that it was one of the existing parties. But we've got all these organisations, and all these organisations, and within them, you'll probably get people to admit that, yes, that there is no route in the UK. We're going to have to, I describe it as the space between the limits of the constraints of British law and the principles of international law. There's a space in there, and that is the space that we have to go through. Outside British law, if I can use that expression, but within international law. I would much prefer that one of the existing parties did this. I always hoped that ALPA would do it, but they should have done it from the outset.
The evidence that goes with them, it doesn't look like that.
Like the other parties, they got entirely tied up in the numbers. It's all about the numbers. The principles, the aims of the party, and you see that most clearly with the SNP, the aims of the party get set aside. They take second or even third place to the numbers of members, numbers of votes, numbers of seats, numbers of pounds in the war chest. It's all the numbers. And their behaviour, everything that they do is geared to addressing these numbers, getting these numbers up. And if the principle and the aims of the party have to be compromised in the process, then, well, that's just too bad. And it's not just the principle and the aims of the party. If even the principle of the sovereignty of the Scottish people, I mean, they're even prepared to compromise that principle. You know, that the very basis of our democracy and our nationhood. They're even prepared to compromise that by deferring to Westminster, by putting Westminster above the people. So it should be one of the existing parties. It's now quite clear that it isn't going to be. So I thought, well, maybe somebody needs to show them how it's done. Yeah? Maybe people need to see what a real independence party, a real liberation party looks like. So I put the idea out there. I just floated it on social media to see if there was any interest. And here we are. I kind of lost control of the whole thing. It just kind of ran away with me.
Well, I mean, it's a big idea. I totally agree with what you're saying. Ideally, SNP should do or something. And even if you're going to be there as as a point to say buck up, or hopefully the New Scotland Party gets traction one way or the other. Like you said, if we're going to go to that space, like you said, in between the British context and the international context, we need to have a discussion, and we're not, are we?
Obviously, yeah. This is as much about changing the terms of debate as anything else. It's about changing the discourse, opening up a new level of discourse. The existing parties have kept a lid on. They've kept that down, and being a Republican Party as well. It simply makes sense. If you're going to break away from the way things have been done, then you break away completely. Besides which, there's an argument if the monarchy is kept, you're not really independent. How can both the people be sovereign and have a monarch that's supposed to be sovereign? It doesn't. It does not compute. But obviously, New Scotland Party has to get some kind of traction in order to have some degree of interest. My basic idea was that we have to show people what a real independence party looks like, and a real Republican Party. At the moment, there was no party for anybody no party for anybody to support if they were a Republican. They just had to. They just had to hold their nose and vote for one of the other party, SNP. So I thought, why not? Why not just do it, just as a demonstration? I am not looking for a New Scotland Party to become the party of government. You imagine me as First Minister. You imagine how many knockouts there would be at the first FAQs. No, not for that.
Well, see,
We don't intend to stand candidates, and I want to make this clear because I want to knock on the head all this nonsense about vote splitting. Which is a nonsense anyway, because there is no independence vote with existing parties anyway, and it's already split. So, yeah, it's nonsense. But New Scotland Party does not intend to stand candidates at the 2026 Holyrood election. There may be circumstances, particular to certain constituencies, there may be circumstances where it could happen. So we're not ruling it out completely, but that is not the intention. The intention is between now and then to campaign for the restoration of Scotland's independence and the creation of a modern democratic Republic of Scotland. We will campaign for that like a true national liberation movement, like the political arm of a national liberation movement, mainly to demonstrate how it should be done. That's the real intention of it.
So it will. So to some degree, it will be like past reflections, where the Manifesto for Independence, like you said, you've been working on it for years. It is there in principle. It's changed a little bit, but you kind of will be holding this up to a degree, to the SNP and to voters and stuff, and saying, come on, we need some trade-offs here. We need some compromise at the very minimum. But of course, we don't get that, do we? So
no, I'm not interested in compromise. It has to go the whole way. But as soon as there's compromise, the thing starts. This is like a game of Jenga. Once you start to compromise, the whole thing eventually.
I understand. What I'm actually meaning is yes, I get what you're saying. For a Manifesto for Independence, in principle, this is exactly what we want. Even But when it comes down to, say, the 2026 elections, when it comes down to the actual vote, how much of an effect, say, is this new campaign or various others going to reflect? And is it going to bring the SNP back up again? Are they going to go, we're listening to the people and go through all that rubbish again? So we need to distinguish, like you said, between, the sort of orthodox political party and what is really a grassroots party, or at least a grassroots initiative. Do you understand?
Well, it's a totally different kind of political party. I talked earlier on about how the existing parties are all about the numbers. It's a total obsession with the numbers, and everything else plays to that. We don't care about the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. I don't care if we never get anybody elected. It would be good if we could get a decent number of supporters, obviously, or we're not going to have any effect if we don't do that. But in terms of money, seats in Parliament, all the rest of the numbers obsess the other parties. No, thank you. And especially not if it means compromising on the basic principles that we want Scotland's independence restored, and we want the monarchy to go. We want to get rid of both the British political establishment and its aristocratic establishment as well. I don't see any point doing one without the other. And I have come from a position of agreeing that the monarchy, the question of the monarchy, was something which could be left until after independence. But I have changed my mind on that, as I have changed my mind on so many other things. Because I honestly think that keeping the monarchy would be the kind of compromise that offered some kind of loophole to the British state, and whatever they get, whatever little loophole there is, there would still be this notion of a British influence, British control in Scotland. And I really want a total reset for Scotland.
I'm glad you spoke about that. Yeah, because this compromise that has come into the conversation here. I mean, for instance, I totally agree with you. Because, like, for instance, say one of the reasons why I do this podcast or do anything, probably the same as yourself, is because you're enthusiastic, to do so, and principled. Like, I've got a good friend who I'll bring up. He's got a question to ask. But it's that same thing. If you're doing what you think is principled and you're correct, then just get on with it. Yeah, regardless, like you said, regardless to the numbers, because that's not important. Because it's the principle that accounts. So we are drawing a distinction there, because, as you know, some people who think differently or can't see both ends of the spectrum, it's like, yeah, but what difference is that going to make in the real world? Philosophically, you can say, is the real world, it's my world where we are. We're not into making compromises. This is a principle, But I'm just saying, we do get this throwback, and people will say, but we're all being so divisive and we need to get back together. So to me, this is always a dilemma. It's great that people are doing different things and enthusiastic about different things. It's coming through, like you said, it's getting to that point where we can have a debate, a discussion, and then possibly move on and create the conditions where we can free ourselves eventually.
Well, this whole coming together thing is another thing that we've had to rethink. Because the fissures in the Yes movement now, from the party level, the SNP, Alba, tribalism, and it goes right through the movement. There's these massive disagreements and differences. I spoke about Gordon McIntyre Kemp earlier on, and his latest initiative was a citizens' convention. It is the most awful nonsense. It is absolutely deplorable nonsense. It is being held up as a new approach to getting independence, and it's a talking shop that isn't even going to talk about independence. It's this whole thing about talking about visions for once we are independent, with nothing whatever to say about how we're going to restore independence. And they say, oh no, don't talk about the process. Don't talk about the process. Well, without a process, all the rest of it is just wishful thinking.
Exactly.
You must have a plan. You must have a process. And it has to be credible. It has to be feasible. Sorry, I think I got... I think
you're right. I think you're right. I think Gordon McIntyre's agenda is to have no process. That's where he is. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Well, it's difficult for my thinking has totally changed over the years. My thinking on the whole constitutional issue has changed as the situation changed, and as I became more aware of various things, and as I got more deeply into analysing things, gone through this complete change, where the political parties and what I call the old guard of the Yes movement, where they are, they're still in 2012, 2013. They haven't moved on since then. Jerry Hassan, he did an article, I think it was in the Sunday National, and he said, the first thing we've got to do is learn the lessons of 2014. Aye, 10 years late, Jerry. Yeah? 10 years late. There should have been a comprehensive review of the 2014 referendum and campaign, both sides of the campaign. That should have been undertaken by the SNP and or some independent body. This was never done. It was never done. So no lessons have been learned. Therefore, no thinking has changed. They're still stuck in this idea, this absolutely insane idea, that somehow the British state is going to cooperate with its own demise.
Yeah.
Because that's what it amounts to. This is an existential battle. At the end of this,
and according to
if there is an end of it, either the British state isn't going to exist as they like to pretend it does, their pretense of it, will cease to exist, or Scotland will cease to exist as a nation. These are the aims, these are the imperatives, and there's no in between there, because so long as we're in between, we're either on the road to one way or the other. We're not.
And there's nothing really in that context, is there, Peter Ross? I mean, some people already say we've already been sold down the road, but in the context of, like you said, while we're under that British architecture and stuff, we can literally lose even what we've got and make it even more harder.
Absolutely, and we're about to lose so much. The country is literally being sold off under our feet.
Yes.
Asset stripping is exploitation.
Oh, I know. Let's not even go there. There's so many examples. There is.
And it makes it all so urgent. And this was all foreseen. I mean, I remember writing articles back in 2011, 2012, 2013, writing articles saying, if it's a no vote, watch out, because this is going to happen and this is going to happen.
Yeah,
I wasn't right on everything, but I was sufficiently right on enough things for it to be able to say, tell ease. And it's gotten worse, and it's getting worse. And the same sort of things as I predicted would happen, they are happening, but maybe just in different ways.
Yeah,
because the British state is nothing if not experienced at this business of exploiting other nations.
Word experience, yeah.
They've got plenty background. So it's very urgent. It's very urgent, because there will come a point where restoring independence is effectively impossible. By one means or another, it'll be effectively impossible. It will either come about through constitutional change or through this process of selling off big chunks of the until
all over the rump.
until there is no possibility of economic of holding any economic levers. All the economic levers will be held by the private sector.
I suppose the simple the simple equation there is it's gone from my head. Carry on, Peter.
Well, I'll stop now.
Well, yeah,
there must be something else.
Sorry, in retrospect, the simple equation there is back in 2014. You could predict, like I said, it's a simple equation. If we lose the referendum, any aspirations of independence in Scotland are going to be pressed even further, because getting a no vote is just like, let's go ahead. But it's quite a simple equation, and so you could easily predict that if
It wasn't just the fact that it was a no vote. It was the fact that a no vote wasn't defined. We had basically, voting no was voting to give the British political establishment a blank check. Just do whatever you like with Scotland, because the no vote was whatever they decided it was after the event. And that's what they've been doing ever since. Yeah. Every time there's some imposition from the British state, they say, "Oh, but you voted for it." Every time we say we want another referendum, "Oh, but you had a referendum." And we're now supposed to have given up everything to the British state by that one vote. Now, yes vote wasn't defined either, and this in the analysis. That I have done, which is an informal analysis, nothing like the analysis that should have been done. The basic problems, all the problems with the referendum stem from the way it was set up. It all stems from the question. The question defines everything that happens in the campaign and with the referendum, everything. There were other factors as well, such as the fact that it's merely a consultative exercise. But the question defines everything. And the question made independence the contentious issue. It held up independence as this thing. Do you really want to go there? As if the union was normality. But it is the union that is anomalous. It is constitutionally anomalous. And when people really understand what the union is and what it does and what effect it has on Scotland socially,
we are the colonialised
economically, culturally, when people really understand that, then they realise that it is this anomaly. It's a grotesque anomaly. It would no nation would sign up to a political union like that. It is grotesquely asymmetric because it was set up initially to give England a massive and permanent advantage over Scotland in all political matters. We can be outvoted all the time. We have never had a UK government that we voted for. We cannot get the UK government that we vote for. Sometimes, coincidentally, we will vote the same way as people in England. And then they say, "Oh, well, you got the government you voted for." No. Getting the government you voted for means getting the government because you voted for it. And we didn't get those governments, usually Labour. We didn't get those governments because we voted for them. We got those governments because England voted for them. We can never get the government that we want. So that is just basically wrong. I mean, that's contrary to everything that the principle of self-determination stands for. It's everything that it's about. We cannot elect our own government. And even Holyrood, it's not really our own government. It's not really our own parliament. But what I'm saying is the people of Scotland are sovereign, so our parliament is whatever we say it is. And if we say our parliament should assert its legislative competence in the area of the Constitution, then that is it. It's a done deal because the people have voted for it. That is why the 2026 election, there'll be all sorts of talk about making it a referendum on independence. That does not work because it's not a referendum for a start, and because independence is not a human right. Self-determination is a human right, and we really need to make this a human rights issue. We need to focus on the capacity to exercise a right of self-determination. That is where the British government is weakest. They cannot possibly deny a right of self-determination. So
when you say we, Peter, this is to me, I'm just trying to help out myself and some views here. When you say we, that distinction, it's like, I mean, I suppose we could agree that, what's left, like the Scottish Parliament and especially the SNP, who we both agree, and lots of others, haven't really worked for independence. It's not even on their manifesto. So we have the situation where we're in this. We're in this political place where we can't escape from. And we even have our own Scottish government who's not, like when you say we want to do this, we would like to do this. None of it's going to happen because even though they might be smaller and smaller, they still have most of the power. So this is where that changes. There's also a space in there, isn't it? Where do we go from, we want this. This is, we can even count the people or we can show, but how do we get that? Like you said, for the Scottish government to turn around and, like you say, claim our own sovereignty and say, you challenge us, we're done with this. How would we ever get to that position in the current context?
It's very difficult to see how we can get there. It's very difficult to see the SNP transforming it into itself into what New Scotland Party is. It's very difficult to see that. But it's definitely never going to happen if there's no public demand for it, if there isn't even agitation for it. And one of the things that occurred to me was that we have all these campaigning organisations. Some of them are Republican. Some of them acknowledge that there's no the famous legal and constitutional route simply doesn't exist. But what we don't have is a foot in the party political camp.
Yeah.
That's why I thought, well, it really has to be a political party, not just another campaigning organisation, because we've had these campaigning organisations just as we've had these parties for all this time, 10 years and more, and nothing's happened. It just hasn't changed. So I think of it as like throwing a pebble in a pond, maybe a boulder, just a wee boulder. Just throwing it in the pond and making a few waves, shake things up a bit. It either works or it doesn't. It's as simple as that.
The similarities I can think of, I mean, there were similarities, although obviously a completely different situation back then, what was happening with Greece and stuff, and then and with Podemos and stuff like that. These things were tiny. Sometimes you can have something tiny that can grow to really big because it picks up on what the actual nation is feeling, or a good part of the nation is feeling, that's not being addressed.
Well, certainly
you have it.
I mean, no bones about that. If there's any number that I'm interested in, is the number of supporters. Once we get the processes set up, the procedures set up, I should say, the number of members, because that will be significant. But it's the way we will get them that is different. We will get there not by pandering to this group and that group and this focus group and this lobbyist. We will get these supporters and these members by saying, this is what we stand for, an independent Scottish Republic. This is what we stand for, and there is no compromise on that. That is what will will bring people to it, or not. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't happen. Hey, I had to try. Somebody had to try.
Exactly. This is the thing, is that principle. It's the principle of it. This brings me on to, you probably remember Jason Baird. He started off, well, National Yes Registry and stuff.
Yes, I know Jason.
Right, yeah, okay, I know Jason.
He organised some very good events.
Yeah, I've been a good friend of his for years, and I'm thinking, anyway, we're going to that afterwards. I said I'd be...
Sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Said he'd like to ask you a question. So he wrote to me earlier. He said that you say on your blog. So this is leading up to the idea of the party we're going. I think I understand if I read it correctly. He says Peter Bell on his blog says that a political party is required to lead the people to independence. He says, what happens if the people reach the point of action but have no political means to enact that action? So could you ask him to define the Yes movement, and ask him why, if he already acknowledges that the people could reach the point of action without a political party to get them there, why wouldn't they just form a party from within at that point at which they needed it?
Time. It would be the basic, simple answer to that. We don't have time. We talked earlier about what is being done to Scotland as we speak, with the special economic zones and the free ports, etc. What is being done? That's being done now.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't just wait and say, well. Again, this is another aspect of my thinking, which has changed somewhat. When the Yes movement was in its prime, in 2013, leadership emerged. We've got this very interesting property. There were no leaders of the Yes movement, but where leadership was required, it emerged from the party. Yeah. And this was particularly true. Well, Jason Baird's an example. This was particularly true when there was a specific task that had to be achieved, something that had to be achieved, something that required an organisation. Organisations have to be hierarchical. You know, somebody has to be in charge. So we got these leadership. These leaders, I should say, emerging from the party. And I think that's what Jason's saying here now. Why don't we just wait? And then when the people are ready, the party that is required will emerge. Well, partly there's the issue of time, but also there's the issue of people don't know what a proper independence party looks like because they've never actually seen one. We've got 300 years plus of conditioning, and we all our minds are colonised. Some just a wee bit less than others. Mine is getting there, you know. I don't think you can ever decolonise your mind.
No,
the colonial influence is so ingrained in our culture. You've got to be conscious of it all the time,
and then try to expound it to others, like Plato in the cave. It's just like that, isn't it?
So there has to be an illustration. There has to be an example, because at the moment, the Yes movement isn't even talking in these terms. Or if they are, it's only small parts about little pockets here and there.
Yeah.
And on this question of unity, I see no prospect, absolutely no prospect of the political parties working together. If they could work together, they wouldn't be different political parties.
Yeah.
If they could work together in any comprehensive way, they'd be the same party. So that's what I say. No, don't try and force everybody to sing from the same hymn sheet. So long as they all adopt the same manifesto for independence, you can vote for any one of them, and you're voting for that. In the meantime, they can say whatever they like about currency or whatever. They can have their differences, so long as they share this common manifesto, because then people are voting for that. There has to be an example that has to be part of the discourse. It has to be part of the debate. This whole manifesto thing, that plan, those steps, starting with the Scottish Parliament asserting its legislative competence, that whole process has to become part of the general conversation, because at the moment it is not part of the discourse in the Yes movement. It is being kept out of the discourse, mainly by the SNP. They've done everything in their power to stop the debate on the constitutional issue widening. They've kept it narrow. They've kept it focused on votes for the SNP, seats for the SNP, MPs for the SNP, MSPs for the SNP, money for the MSP, status for them. It's all about the numbers.
It is. And it's like you said, and for a lot of people, as you know, it's just, they just go, oh, whatever, I'm just voting for SNP or whatever, oh, I'm doing this. And it's very difficult. And of course, you've really got really busy lives and very difficult lives these days for most folk. As I'm sure you'd agree, it's very difficult to even bother yourself about the politics of it all, isn't it?
Again, that is something else that we hope to do with New Scotland Party, because it's a bit different, because it's a bit radical, and we intend to be a bit loud, and a bit forceful, a bit assertive, a bit bold. All the things our politicians aren't. And we can afford to do. I can afford to do that, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm coming up 74 years old. I don't have a career to look after or anything, so I can shout my head off. And you'll notice I'm trying to do it without swearing. This is the new thing.
You're doing very well.
So hopefully that might just grab people's attention, both people who already are or have been part of the Yes movement. Maybe it'll get the juices flowing a wee bit again, and maybe it'll grab other people's interests. We don't know. We have to try something. We sure as hell just can't keep going on the way we are, because we know exactly what's going to happen. The 2026 elections, there's going to be all the talk about it being a de facto referendum. The campaign will be all squabbling between the SNP and ALPA. It will be an unedifying affair, and the whole independence issue will be sidelined. And after the election, it'll go on the back burner again. I can guarantee that. I can absolutely guarantee that. It's because the parties don't have a plan. They have no commitment to restoring Scotland's independence. They're committed only to talking about it, and they're talking about it solely to get votes. And yes, you make a good point about it being easy voting for the SNP. Yeah, well, that's a decided advantage that they've got. People just take it for granted that they are the party of independence. Well, it's no good us standing up and saying, well, oh no, they're not the party of independence. And somebody else then turns around and says, well, if they're not, who is? If the SNP is not a party of independence, what does a party of independence look like? What is it supposed to look like? So we have to have something that we can point to and say, New Scotland Party. It may not be exactly what you were thinking of. It may not be exactly what you want, but it's heading there. It's going in the right direction. At least we have a plan. At least we have a commitment, an unshakable commitment, an unwavering commitment, an unbending commitment. We don't change that. It's independence and a republic. That's it. That doesn't change. And if nobody votes for it, fine. Leadership, political leadership, isn't about adjusting your principles so as to have the widest possible appeal. That's the way political parties go about it in the UK. In the British political system, that's the way you go about it. That's what the SNP is now involved in. Political leadership is about taking people to places they didn't know they could go.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even aware that they could go there. So that's what leadership is. You go there first and say, look, here we are. This is possible. This is reasonable. This is right.
Yeah.
And then people come to you. It's a different approach.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, and it always strikes me these, I don't know, you could call them principal pockets or pockets of principles, where people are working, but even within that sort of microcosm, like for instance, I don't call myself as a leader because I helped or I organized a meeting or an idea or something. I'm just like somebody who's put it forward, and then hopefully we'll all just take hold of it and run with it and stuff. But of course, as it gets bigger and bigger and stuff, you can't just say, oh, it does itself. Because like you said, there's someone who leads, or there's somebody who instigates, or somebody who helps. But obviously, the bigger the picture grows, the more difficult it is to orchestrate it all.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of fine words talked about democracy, and it should all be democratic, at every level. But as I said earlier, there comes a time when things have to be organised.
Mm-hmm.
And if something has to be organised, somebody has to step up and take charge. There was
and what better than sort of a general, principles that most people can agree on, or at least to use as the floor, as it were, to move forward.
Well, the principle, the core idea of the whole independence movement is end the union.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Now, if we can't agree on that, then we're not an independence movement.
But then
independence means ending the union. Ending the union means independence. They're inseparable. End the union is simply defining what it is that we're aiming for.
Because as you know, some people would define that within the UK context. Yeah. So that doesn't really work for us.
I detest talk about us winning independence as if it was a prize. It was in the gift of the British state. It is not. It's our entitlement. We are entitled to it. It's ours. Nobody owns it to give to us. And if they give it to us, it's not real independence.
Independence, yeah, exactly.
It has to be taken.
Power devolves, its power retained, as it were, yes.
Absolutely. Power is never given. It's only ever taken. That which is given is not real power.
Yeah.
We need some real power home here in Scotland because British governments are destroying this country. They are absolutely destroying this country. I should say, they're doing not a bad job of destroying big chunks of England as well.
Oh, of course.
But at least people in England, at least we can say to people in England, well, you voted for it. So they could say that they didn't.
Well, yeah, we would like the chance. We would like the chance to run ourselves. Thanks very much.
So government's getting election on 30 elected on 30% of the vote or something like that. That's not my idea of democracy. But by their own rules, they voted for it. We didn't. We cannot vote for it. There's no way for us to vote for a government that we want. It just can't happen, ever. That's what the union means.
Would I be roughly directing summing up here then, if I get this right, what you're saying is we need what New Scotland Party doing in the Manifesto for Independence is create a space where we can have a debate, but not just a debate where we can all agree that we need to end the union, because like I said, some people will think they can end the union through the current political means, the way it is.
Well, they can't.
They can, but what you're describing...
They can't.
But
no, absolutely can't.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is like you're literally carving away, like this is where we're having the debate, And honestly, it's like I said, after 10 years ago, after we lost the referendum, I remember remarking to people over the years, I don't think we're ever going to get independence until people in their own minds can actually believe they're independent or sovereign. Because I would meet so many people where it was they wasn't sure. And to me, it's like you said, it's just like, well, either you think that you are or you're not. I think if you are, you can get into this space and have this debate and we can push it forward. But I think in the context of, where people are still differing about, oh, are we allowed to do that? We must defer. We've lost already as soon as you start thinking like that.
As soon as you start thinking like that, you have to think out of that wee British box.
Yeah.
And I get that is really difficult for people. Like I say, it's 300 years of conditioning. The education system. Alf Baird has exposed a lot of that. Sarah Sawyer's has exposed how our constitution has been suppressed, smothered. There are so many aspects. It is colonialism. It is colonialism.
It really is, yeah.
It's a refinement of colonialism, if you like. It's almost as if they've finally perfected it. Because at the moment, the UN doesn't even recognise it as colonialism.
Exactly.
So, and one of the alternative routes that is suggested is going through the UN. Nobody's been able to explain to me exactly how that works. I want to see the process. I want to see the plan. But going through the UN would require that we first get on the list of non-self-governing territories. The UN has this list of non-self-governing territories, and that is where it's continuing its decolonization battle. There are various reasons why these places are still non-self-governing, but we're not even on the list, and we should be. We absolutely should be. The thing is, by all the means that have been suggested to me so far, it could take years, possibly even decades, to get on that list. Because they're talking mainly about taking the British government to court. And the British government loves that. They absolutely love that. They'll lap it up. Oh, they can keep a court case going for years and years and years. They can always find something else to argue about. Just for a example, look at Tommy Sheppard with his attempt to get the polling information, the freedom of information attempt to get private polling from the Tories. All they did was just keep saying no, and it just dragged on and dragged on until, in actual fact, the information itself became totally irrelevant. Dragged on. Well, they do the same. If we take them to court, we are the ones who have to prove something.
The modus operandi, and we already know all this. It's a pointless exercise.
We shouldn't have to prove anything. It's the British state that has to prove that the status quo is satisfactory. It is democratically satisfactory, that it meets international standards. And the international community aren't going to go looking for faults. It's going to have to be shoved in their faces. Because, mostly they just don't want to rock the boat. So it has to be shoved in their faces. So the only way it's going to work, as far as I can see, and certainly work in the short to medium term, is if we do something that the British state feels obliged to challenge. And if it's a challenge to something that's related to human rights, it's not going to the UK Supreme Court, it's going to the International Court of Justice, because it's a human rights issue. So let them then argue in the ICJ that Scotland isn't a nation, or that the Section 30 process is a democratically satisfactory means of exercising our right of self-determination. Let them try arguing that in front of the court. And I actually believe that there is a very good chance that they will not issue a legal challenge. They will not mount a legal challenge because of the difficulties that would pose for them. Either way, they're going to end up having to say things that they don't want to say. They either have to say Scotland is not a nation, Scottish people are not a people, we don't have the right of self-determination, you're just a wee bit added on England. Now, they definitely don't want to be saying that out loud, and they definitely don't want to be saying it in court. Or they're going to have to say, oh, well, there is this process by which they can exercise, the people of Scotland can exercise. We already have this process. Well, describe it. Nah, that's not good enough. By the time they're actually describing a process that is satisfactory, they're describing the very process that we want. So either way, they've given up. So why? In part, I mean, I don't. Part of me thinks no, they will challenge it because they're that stupid. They won't even realise the sort of arguments that they're going to have to put forward. Yeah.
Plus, whether it's true or not, they'll believe they'll still have a lot of clout on the world stage.
And there's also this point that no British Prime Minister wants to be seen as the Prime Minister that lost Scotland. There's that, so they'll fight it to the last breath. But sorry, I lost my thread there.
Well, anyway, Peter. So before we should probably finish shortly. So we've been talking, Joe. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time. So with the party, what's next on the agenda? Can you let us know? Have you got any immediate plans? I should imagine there's a lot going on, and you're trying to.
You're kind of glorifying them, calling them plans, Eddie.
Okay.
I'm very much playing it by ear. No, I don't know what I'm doing initially, but once I sit down and think about it and do a bit of research, then I know what I'm doing. I've started the process of registering with the Electoral Commission. There's some documentation, such as a party constitution, which has to be completed first. But I started the process thinking that it could register as a minor party. But that is not going to work. That's not going to work because registering that way just does not do what we need it to do. So, so we now have to. I am in the process of drafting a party constitution, and there's some other stuff that we need, financial arrangements and management structure, that kind of thing. But the process has started. We're kind of locked into that now, so that's fine. I've made a start on getting the word out there. We now have a Facebook group. People might scoff, but a hell of a lot of things started on a Facebook group.
Yeah.
We have the Facebook group's only, I think, 2 days old, and it's got 200 members already. So. I've
good ideas tend to spread. Not always, we know, but tend to spread.
People have to know that they're there in the first place.
Cool.
Last night I was up till midnight, and I got a website organised. So it's only a holding page for the moment. The next step, the next important step, apart from all the fiddling about, we're getting a proper website up and running and various other bits and pieces. At the moment, this is totally a one-man operation. I don't think I'm the best man for the job at all. But
you just do what you can. You just want to do it.
I'm getting on with it. Somebody has to do it. I find it so often. Somebody has to just break that inertia and just get things going. But the next important thing is that we're having an online meeting.
Oh, okay.
An inaugural meeting, which will basically be the start of the party. We'll have some sort of launch event later on, once we're registered and once we've got everything in place. But that meeting, I think it was supposed to be tomorrow, but I'm in Edinburgh for a little demonstration at Queen Elizabeth's House tomorrow. You know, the unelected shadow Scottish government, the colonial administration. So I'm going to that tomorrow morning.
Good for you.
There's going to be a bit of media attention on that, I think.
I have to look out for that.
It's not my event, I have to say. It's someone else has organised it. I'm just going along. So it's going to be difficult to have that other meeting tomorrow. It's probably going to be Sunday now. But hopefully after that, we'll get some volunteers to do bits and pieces of work. That's about it, really. You know, we just have to have some people prepared to take on roles within the party from the off. At some point, there will be some kind of party conference, and will become more like a normal party. But in the initial stages, it's more like a dictatorship than anything else. Now, I'm sitting here saying it will be this way and it is this way. Well, okay, once it's set up, the membership can change that if they want. They might annoy me, but it'll be up to them.
But at the end of the day, you're as long as, in my mind, and I'm sure you agree, as long as you're going along being open and honest, there's no problem with yourself, is there?
Well, I think so long as I'm stating this principle, which to me seems like the very core of the independence movement. So long as it's
even yourself,
and so long as we're not seen as hedging around that issue and trying to hide what we're doing with all sort of mealy-mouthed language. Let's talk about what was it? What was the expression? I think it was from the Yusuf or one of his underlings came up with. Give democratic effect. Give democratic effect to a vote by the people of Scotland. Hang on a minute. How come we need, if the people of Scotland are sovereign, how come we need some external agency to give democratic effect to something that we have voted for? No.
Exactly.
No. If we are sovereign, ours is the last word. People have to start thinking in those sort of terms.
Yeah.
They have to realise that what being sovereign means. It's not just something that you say about yourself because it makes you feel good. It's not just a slogan that you shout. It's what you are. It's what you do. You've not just got to be sovereign, you've got to act sovereign. And you're not sovereign if you're asking for a Section 30 order.
And what goes on that is, what I will also add to that, Peter, is like with yourself, speaking to people like yourself and Jason Baird as an example, all these situations and stuff. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about. I think if you're being open and honest and frank, then, there's always then that's the only basis that you can move forward. If anybody tries to pull the wool over your eyes or use language like affecting getting a democratic effect, get lost. That's what I want to listen to or have a conversation with if I can help it,
we might call it being, what did you say, open and honest and...
Yeah, transparent,
And transparent, yeah. With us, we might call it, others will call it something else.
Of course, yeah.
And I will get divisive. I'll get that. I don't care. I honestly don't care. Division is essential in democratic politics. If there is no division, what you've got is a totalitarian state. Yeah,
exactly.
Democracy is the way that we resolve these divisions, the way we resolve the differences without bloodshed. That the democratic process is the method by which we do that. It doesn't do away with division altogether. Of course, there's going to be division. I'll get called a troublemaker. I'll get called an opinionated loudmouth. I'll get called a lot of things. Probably nothing that I haven't been called before. And I just don't care. So if anybody's thinking about getting in touch, just to tell me what a horrible person I am, don't bother. I already know, and I don't care. Okay?
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, do you know what? I'm finding that even on a personal level as I get older. I mean, just it's so strange, isn't it? You don't really care.
It's what
You want to create. You want to create an honest content. That to me, what seems to be what your endeavour is.
Well, it's easy. It's easy to be open and honest and frank and transparent when you have a real commitment. When you are committed, really committed, truly committed to a cause. When you say the aims of the party are to restore Scotland's independence and establish a modern democratic republic, when you say that and nothing else, you don't have anything to say about currency or housing or anything else, and nationalising the railways, free ports, no. We have no policies on any of these things. We are Scotland's party of liberation. We are about the liberation of Scotland. That is what we're about, nothing else. And when that's all there is, it's very easy to be open and honest and frank about it. There is no possibility of being mealy-mouthed about it. You just can't be. It's there. It is what it is. And it's a case for people out there. It's a case of take it or leave it. You take it as it is. Don't come along, as has happened with other parties, no names. Don't come along afterwards to a meeting and say, oh, I think we should have a policy on this or a policy on that. Because it's going to be in the party constitution that will be ruled out of order. We are not getting into the business of creating policies because we don't see ourselves being in government either now or after independence. Maybe after independence, who knows? But we certainly don't see ourselves as being in a position to make policies for after independence. Isn't independence supposed to be about giving the Scottish people the power to decide? So what's all this nonsense about us deciding now, us preempting their democratic choices? It's a total nonsense. Besides which, I could say, oh, I'm all for introducing a universal basic income, which I am, by the way, and a total reform of the whole tax benefit system. Reform in the sense of putting a bomb under it, and pouring some petrol and setting fire to the whole thing and starting again. I could come out and say, this is what we will do after independence. No, it won't. No, it won't. I have no power to say what will happen after.
You would instantly turn into an orthodox politician, and I could just put you in the rubbish bin with all the rest of them.
No, don't pretend to have power. It was a phrase a friend of mine used the other day, which I thought was quite apt. Ambition without power. And I think that was the phrase he used. He'll let me know if I've got it wrong. But I kind of like that, especially the without power bit. Because we're not looking for political power. We're not looking for the trappings of political power. We're not looking for the status and the remuneration. We're not looking for any of that. All we're looking to do is spark up Scotland's independence movement with a new way of talking about it.
Yes, totally get that. Like you said, and it's been a long time coming, and it still may be a long time coming. But like you said, you've got to keep it up. Just as an anecdote, I remember I said to my wife was talking to me about a teenage daughter, and it was about going and getting your room done, cleaning your room, and and then you go through that process, and you go, oh, but she doesn't like it. And you go, and it's not going to make any difference. And you go, well, see, this is a life lesson, isn't it? It's like, even though it's not going to work, in principle, you've still got to do it. You've still got to say, you should tidy your room. Whether she does or doesn't, you've got an obligation to follow through that, haven't you?
Yeah. It's you've got to make that commitment. You've got. There's a certain element of desperation in this, Eddie. I mean, I think everybody will know what I'm talking about there. I get a lot of communication with the online and private community. People saying they're just so frustrated, they're so desperate for something, anything. Yeah. We'll get all these people giving their views on what it should be. I mean, there's Gordon McIntyre's Kemp's initiative, for example, and there are various others. There are various other things going on. But I don't see any of them really inspiring a large number of people. And this is not to say, I also don't want the New Scotland Party to become one of these parties that's against another party. I don't see that at all. I'll be quite happy to live with the SNP, Alapa, all the others. Quite happy to get along with them. I have nothing against them at all, and people can vote for them if they want, so long as they're satisfied. If they are satisfied, if they're still satisfied that the SNP has any intention of moving us towards independence, then by all means you should join the party, give the party your money, give the party your votes. Go on. I'm not going to come around and say you shouldn't be voting for them. All I'm going to be saying is that you should be voting for a party that has a plan for independence like we have. I don't care if it's us, but if it isn't us, you better go back to your own party, your party you favour, and tell them that is what you want.
Yeah, exactly. This is all we can hope for, Peter. Right, I better let you get off, Peter. Go and get some lunch and stuff. Is there before we go on? I don't want to cut you short. If there's anything else that you would like to say,
I've no idea. I don't know what I've said already. I wasn't listening.
I think we've done pretty well. I think we have. So I'm hoping you'll say yes, and we'll get you on again at some point in the future to see how you're doing. That would be great if you would do that.
Eddie, I'm always up for this. I'm always ready to do this because I know I like writing. I like writing for various reasons. A lot of the time I write what I think. A lot of the time I write in order to think. It's part of the thinking process to me. So much so that I've sometimes I actually famously once did write an article where I started off with one position quite thoroughly with one position, and by the end of the article I totally turned around because I'd argued myself out of it. Needless to say, that article didn't get published. I must still have it somewhere. I wish I could find it. It's quite funny. No, I know some people prefer to this kind of thing. I've been meaning to start my own podcast for ages.
Well, maybe that might be a good idea. That might be a really good idea, Peter.
My problem is that I'm a bit of a completist and a bit AC. What is it? ACDC? It's not that. Yeah. I'm a bit obsessive, and Yeah, I'm a bit of a completist and a bit of a perfectionist, but I make a podcast, and it's got to be broadcast quality. Everything's everything's got to be right, and it's kind of difficult.
You said earlier about ambition without power. I could probably add to that aspiration without expectation.
Yeah.
A good way to go.
We might get a few couplets like that.
Oh, brilliant. Listen, Pete, I'll let you get off. It's been absolutely lovely speaking to you, and we'll speak again soon, and we'll keep up. Oh, and one thing before you go, maybe, like, speaking to Jason, if you don't mind, just, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, we'll go through it. But like, I was speaking with Jason Baird, and I spoke to him about you before and stuff, and it's interesting listening to you both separately. I just wonder if it might be fun to get you together if you would both agree, just so we could have that discussion and hopefully zone in and more and widen the debate,
Well, you tell him, Eddie, so long as he doesn't interrupt me.
Okay.
It'll be okay.
Okay, well, what I'll do is then I promise I'm going to be in control. I'll control you.
Jason's got a lot of good stuff to say. I haven't seen him, I've spoken to him in a long time.
Well,
but he'll always be, for me, the guy who, not on his own, but he was the main man, I think, in the team that organised that event in Stirling.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Which we might call it a talking shop.
Yeah,
right, it was a talking shop. It was a talking shop that you came away actually feeling as if you'd achieved something. Yeah. It was a beautifully organised event, but for the fact that I couldn't hear a damn thing that was going on. Because we were sitting in this hall, there were all separate tables.
That's right.
And I'm sitting at this table, and I, with all the noise in the background, I couldn't hear anything anybody was saying at the table. So it made it kind of problematic. But nonetheless, it was a very productive exercise. Very enjoyable. I don't know of anybody who wasn't enthusiastic about it. So Jason always gets.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because honestly, I just, knowing you both well, I have such a huge amount of respect for Jason. I often, sometimes get the crack with him in an evening, and honestly, he's so funny. But just honest and open and honest like yourself. Yeah. And like I said, so I'd be able to love because, and like I said, I'm not going to say anything now, but there is a last chance initiative, things get counted campaign and stuff. And I'm just feeling myself, am I actually starting to get some more enthusiasm about the movement all around, things that are happening? I hope so. I want to find that enthusiasm again and move back outside, trying to fight from inside that political space of an independent rather than, part of the shit system that we live in the UK. But I better stop there.
Aye, we better, I suppose. You just about got me going again there.
Well, Peter, that's great. Listen, I look forward to speaking to you again very soon, and I hope all our viewers, I'm sure some of you enjoyed our interview and our banter. Thank you very much for listening.